A grieving mother once froze the entire world. She stopped the seed in the soil, silenced every harvest, and let humankind starve. And that is why, even now, winter comes. To understand the first winter, we must go back to a sunlit meadow at the edge of the world, where nothing had ever died, and the spring had never once ended. There, a young goddess gathered flowers among her companions. Persephone, the bright daughter of Demeter, goddess of the grain. She was quite simply the spring itself walking. The meadow was thick with crocus and violet and iris, and Persephone wandered ahead of the others, laughing, filling the folds of her white gown with blossoms. Then she saw it, a single flower more beautiful than any she had ever known. A narcissus, glowing pale and strange, 100 blooms crowded upon one slender stem. She did not know it was a trap. The earth herself had grown it on Zeus's secret order, a lure set to draw the maiden away from every helping hand. Enchanted, Persephone reached out with both hands and pulled the narcissus from the ground. And in that very instant, the world tore open beneath her feet. The earth split with a roar, and up out of the chasm thundered a black chariot wreathed in gold, drawn by 4 immortal horses with eyes like burning coals. Upon it stood Hades, lord of the dead, pale, crowned, and terrible, risen up out of the dark to claim the one bright thing he wanted in all the world. He seized her in a single motion, lifted her struggling up into the chariot, and wheeled the horses around, back down into the breaking earth. Persephone screamed, a high, tearing cry that rang off the mountains and out across the sea, calling for her father, for her mother, for anyone who could hear. But the chasm was already closing. The chariot plunged down the black road into the underworld, and the meadow sealed over above her as though she had never once been there. Only 2 beings in all the world heard that cry, Hecate in her shadowed cave, and Helios, the sun, who sees every deed done beneath the open sky. Far away, Demeter felt it before she heard it, a mother's certainty that something was wrong. Then the faint echo of her daughter's voice reached her, and she ran. She came to the meadow and found it empty. No companions, no daughter, only the torn ground where the narcissus had stood, and a silence that answered nothing. She cried. So began the search that would one day change the world. Demeter lit 2 torches from the fires of the mountain and went out into the dark to find her child. For 9 days and 9 nights, she wandered the earth, over every mountain and shore, eating nothing, drinking nothing, never resting, calling a name that no one would answer. She did not bathe, she did not sleep. The bright goddess of the harvest grew gray and hollow-eyed, a torch in each hand, burning down the long, dark roads of the world. No god would tell her what had happened. No mortal had seen. Her daughter had vanished from the face of the earth as wholly as a stone dropped into the deep sea. On the 10th day, Hecate came to her at last, carrying her own torch through the gloom, her shadowed face grave with the little that she knew. I heard her cry out, Hecate said. I heard her call as she was taken, but I did not see the face of the one who took her into the dark. Together, the 2 goddesses went to the one witness who could never be deceived, to Helios, the sun, who looks down upon all the deeds of gods and of men alike. Tell me, Demeter begged, standing before his blazing chariot. You see everything beneath the sky. Tell me who has taken my daughter, my only child, down into the dark. And Helios, not unkindly, told her the truth she had crossed the whole world to find. It was Hades, he said, lord of the dead, who carried her below. He took her to be his queen in the underworld. Grieve no more than you must, Demeter. He is a great god, and no unworthy husband for your bright child. But the sun was not yet finished. And know this, he said, Hades did not act alone. The one who gave your daughter away was her own father, was Zeus. Something broke in Demeter then. Not only her daughter stolen away, but bartered off in secret by the very husband she had trusted, the king of the gods himself. Her grief turned cold and hard as iron. She would not go back to Olympus. She would not sit among the gods who had let this thing be done to her child. So Demeter hid her divinity. She wrapped her shining body in the shape of an old woman, bent and gray and mortal, and walked down into the world of men. She came at last to Eleusis, a small town of mortals, and sat down by a well in the shade of an olive tree, an old gray stranger, saying nothing to anyone. There the daughters of King Eleusis found her, come down to draw their water. They saw only a weary old woman and with kind hearts asked her gently who she was. Demeter gave them a false name and a sorrowful story, and the girls, moved to pity, brought her home to their mother, Metanera, in the hall of the king. The household took the stranger in, but the goddess sat wrapped in silence, tasting no food, touching no wine, lost so deep in grief she would neither laugh nor speak a word. Until an old serving woman named Iambe began to jest, teasing, foolish, irreverent jokes until at last, despite all of it, the grieving goddess broke into a faint, unwilling smile. Demeter would not drink their wine. Instead, she asked for a humble cup, only barley and water and soft mint, and drank, and so was eased a little in her endless sorrow. Metanera had a late-born son, an infant prince named Demeter, and she gave the child into the old stranger's care. And Demeter, holding him, conceived a secret and loving gift. By day, she anointed the boy with ambrosia, the food of the gods. And by night, in secret, she laid him down into the very heart of the burning hearth fire. She meant to burn away his mortality, to make the child deathless and ageless forever, a gift of love to the family who had sheltered her in the depths of her grief. And the boy thrived strangely, growing like a young god. But one night, Metanera rose from her bed and saw her infant son lying down in the flames, and shrieked in terror. The spell shattered. Demeter snatched the child from the fire, and the gift was lost. Demeter would be mortal now, and would die in time, like all the sons of men. Then the old woman rose, and her disguise fell away. Light blazed from her, the hall filled with the scent of harvest. She stood revealed Demeter, the great goddess herself. "Foolish mortals," she said, "who could not tell a blessing from a danger. Build me a great temple here at Eleusis, and I myself will teach you my secret rites." And so the people of Eleusis raised her temple, and Demeter shut herself within it, apart from all the gods. And there she nursed the full weight of her grief and her cold rage. For if Olympus would not give her daughter back, then Demeter would show them all what a mother's grief could do. She turned her power against the living earth itself. The soil hardened. The buried seed rotted where it lay. No green shoot rose, no grain ripened, no fruit swelled, and the whole living world began to wither and to die. It was the first winter the world had ever known, and it did not end. The fields went gray, the trees stood bare, and a killing cold settled over everything that lived. The oxen dragged the plow across the dead ground in vain. The farmers cast their seed into the furrows that gave back nothing at all. Famine crept across the earth like a shadow. The people began to starve, and as they starved, they stopped bringing their offerings. For who can burn a sacrifice when there is no harvest, no beast, nothing left at all to give? And this, at the last, was what truly moved Olympus. For the gods are fed by the smoke of sacrifice, and now, across the whole silent earth, every altar had gone stone cold. Zeus saw that Demeter meant it. She would let the entire human race die before she yielded. She would unmake the whole world rather than go on living without her child. So he sent the goddess Iris down to her, and then god after god bearing gifts and high honors, begging her to relent at last and return to her place on Olympus. Demeter refused them all. She would not set foot upon Olympus, she swore, and she would not let one single green thing grow upon the earth until she saw her daughter's face again. At last Zeus understood that there was only one road left open to him. He turned to Hermes, the swift messenger, the one god who could walk freely into the kingdom of the dead. "Go down into the dark," Zeus told him, "to the house of Hades, and bring my daughter back up into the light before her mother lets the whole of the world perish." So Hermes went down the long road that all the dead must walk down past the dark river into the great silent hall where Hades sat upon his throne of shadow. And there beside him sat Persephone, pale now and quiet, a queen upon a throne she had never once wanted, so far from the sunlit meadow where she had been seized. When she saw Hermes and heard that he had come to bring her home to her mother, a wild hope leapt up inside her, and joy broke suddenly across her pale face. Hades heard the command of Zeus, and his dark face showed nothing at all. He did not rage, and he did not refuse. He bowed his crowned head and said his wife might go. But the Lord of the Dead was cunning. As Persephone rose to leave him, he held out to her, very gently, the fruit of his own dark realm, a single ripe red pomegranate. And Persephone, perhaps from hunger, perhaps from courtesy, perhaps because a watching queen forgets nothing, took a few of the glistening blood-red seeds and ate. It was the smallest thing, a mere handful of seeds, but it was the food of the dead, and whoever once tastes the food of the dead is bound forever to that place. Hades had not truly let her go at all. He had let her leave, knowing full well that having eaten, she would always have to come back down again to him. Hermes led her up the long road into the light, and she ran across the new bare fields to her mother. Demeter rose, and the two of them fell into each other's arms. For one bright, shining moment, there was nothing else in all the world but the reunion. The mother and the daughter, holding each other, weeping, as though they would never let go. But then Demeter grew suddenly still and asked the question she most dreaded. "Did you eat anything?" she whispered. "While you were down there in the dark? Anything at all?" And Persephone told her of the pomegranate. So the truth came out at last. She could not stay. She belonged now in part to the cold kingdom of the dead below. And so a bargain was struck by Zeus above, by Demeter, by Hades in the dark below. For one part of every single year, Persephone would descend and reign as queen of the underworld. And for the rest of the turning year, she would rise once more into the light, into her mother's waiting arms, into the warmth of the living world that lay above. And so it has been ever since. Each year, when Persephone goes down into the dark, Demeter grieves, and her grief falls upon the world. The fields die, the cold comes. That is winter. But every spring her daughter climbs back into the light, and the mother's joy runs green across the whole earth again. And at Eleusis, Demeter left mortals a secret, that for us too, the descent into darkness is never quite the end. Thank you for watching. If this tale stayed with you, subscribe. A new myth arrives every week, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Until then, may the old stories keep their hold on you.